He wasn't looking for fame. He wasn't even looking for a fight. All he wanted was to share his dream, a business built from the ground up, against every odd. But when he sat in that studio chair, staring into the blinding lights and the smirk of a TV host who thought he could humiliate him, the room shifted. What happened in the next few minutes was more than an interview. It was a battle of dignity, truth, and survival. And the way he responded left an entire nation stunned. Ryan Hill had always been the kind of man who carried himself with quiet pride. Born and raised in a small neighborhood on the South Side, he grew up knowing struggle, but also knowing resilience. By his late 20s, he had built something rare, his own business. Long nights, endless rejection, and doors slammed in his face hadn't stopped him. Piece by piece, he carved a place for himself, a symbol of what determination could achieve when society expected otherwise. To his community, he wasn't just a businessman. He was proof that success was possible. Parents pointed him out to their children, saying, "See? That's what hard work looks like." And Ryan wore that responsibility with honor. He spoke softly, listened carefully, and carried the kind of ambition that couldn't be hidden. So when a popular TV network invited him for what seemed like a celebration of young entrepreneurs, he felt a spark of pride. This was his chance to share not just his story, but the stories of so many who looked like him, who fought against the same odds. He dressed carefully that morning, rehearsed his words, and walked into the studio with hope in his chest. But what Ryan didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that the stage had already been set. Not for celebration, not for recognition, but for something else entirely. Something that would test his voice, his patience, and his very dignity. The cameras were rolling, the studio lights blinding, and Ryan Hill sat across from the host with his hands folded neatly in his lap. At first, it seemed harmless. The opening questions were polite, about his upbringing, his community, and the small company he had built from scratch. He answered carefully, steady in tone, his voice carrying both humility and pride. But as the minutes ticked on, something shifted. The smile on the host's face grew sharper, almost mocking. Questions turned into jabs. "So tell me, Ryan, do you really think people like you can compete in an industry dominated by, let's say, more established players?" The words hung heavy in the air, coated with condescension. The audience chuckled softly, unsure if it was a joke or an insult. Ryan forced a smile, but his chest tightened. He had faced out before, but not like this, not on live television. Each question that followed carried the same sting, as if designed not to highlight his success but to undermine it. "Don't you think you're just a product of the system's charity? Wouldn't you say your story is more about luck than skill?" The host leaned in with every word, enjoying the spectacle. The audience's reactions grew louder, some laughing, some whispering. And all Ryan could feel was the familiar weight of 1,000 eyes, waiting for him to stumble. He glanced toward the cameras. Somewhere out there, his mother might be watching. His community might be watching. Children who saw him as a symbol of possibility might be watching. The pressure was suffocating. Still, Ryan answered with composure. He reminded the host of the late nights, the rejections, and the grit it took to get this far. But his words were constantly twisted, reframed to sound arrogant or naive. The interview was no longer about his achievements. It had become a trap, a performance built to entertain at his expense. And then came the moment that made the room fall silent. The host leaned back, crossed his arms, and said with a smirk, "But let's be honest, Ryan. Do you really think America is ready to take someone like you seriously?" The words cut deep, sharper than anything before. The audience gasped. Some laughed nervously. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. And Ryan felt the air leave his lungs. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about every barrier, every stereotype, every wall built to remind him, and others like him, that they were outsiders in their own country. For a second, he considered staying quiet, letting the moment pass. But another thought rose stronger. If he stayed silent now, it wouldn't just be his dignity on the line. It would be the dignity of everyone who had ever believed in him. He straightened his back, his eyes fixed on the host. The lights felt hotter, the cameras closer. The tense, the silence in the studio was suffocating. Every eye in the room locked on Ryan, waiting for him to falter. The host's smirk widened, confident that his words had struck the final blow. But Ryan didn't flinch. He leaned forward, his voice steady but charged with a weight that made the air tremble. "You ask if America is ready to take someone like me seriously," he said. "But here's the truth. you've already been taking from people like me for centuries. Our labor built your cities. Our voices shaped your culture. Our resilience carried this country through storms that tried to bury us under them. And still, you sit here, smiling, as if my success is a fluke instead of proof of what we've always been capable of. The audience froze. Some gasped. Others shifted uneasily in their chairs. The host blinked, thrown off balance for the first time all night. But Ryan wasn't finished. His voice rose, not with anger, but with the kind of unshakable conviction that can't be ignored. You want to reduce my story to charity or luck? Look around. Every barrier I faced was built by hands like yours. And every barrier I broke is proof that no system, no smirk, no insult, no doubt, can erase who we are or what we've built. You don't get to decide when America is ready for us. We've been here. We've been ready. The real question is, when will you be? The room erupted, not with laughter this time, but with a wave of stunned silence, followed by scattered applause that grew louder with every second. The host tried to regain control, fumbling for words, but the moment had already slipped away. And as the cameras captured Ryan's steady gaze, one thing was clear. This was no longer just an interview. It was a reckoning. When the interview ended, Ryan didn't walk out with a handshake or a smile. He walked out with something heavier, something that would follow him long after the camera shut off. Yet he also walked out with his head high, carrying the knowledge that he had spoken truth to a system built to silence him. Clips of that moment spread like wildfire. Millions replayed his words, dissecting every sentence, sharing them across social media. For some, he became an inspiration. For others, a threat. But either way, he could no longer be ignored. The man who was supposed to be humiliated became the man who reminded a nation of its reflection. For Ryan, it wasn't about going viral. It was about dignity, the dignity denied to too many for too long. Because his story wasn't just his own. It was the story of every young black entrepreneur told they don't belong. Every professional was questioned not on their skills, but on the color of their skin. Every dreamer is forced to carry the weight of proving their worth twice over, only to be mocked when they finally succeed. And that's the power, and the pain, of stories like his. They remind us that racism doesn't always wear a uniform or shout in the streets. Sometimes, it hides in smiles and studio lights. Sometimes, it looks like entertainment when it's really humiliation. So the question we are left with is this: how many more Ryans will it take before America stops asking if it's ready and starts admitting the truth? Because the truth has always been here. The truth has always been ready. The only question is, are we?